Greetings, Virginia Beach city workers. We are in the fight for our lives this year. We know that every single one of you that works hard day in and out to keep the city running deserves a very serious raise this year. You are decades behind. My name is Dante Strabino. I'm the international representative with the Virginia Beach City Workers Union. And this presentation was made at the last two membership meetings we had of our union and was developed out of lots of discussion with you, with city workers and other leaders in your union and other departments across the city. So we want to talk about what is at stake this year and what we can really win if we as city workers stick together and really push. It's going to take us really having all hands on deck the next couple weeks. But if we stick together, we can really win very serious raises. So the proposal from the union this year is threefold to the city of Virginia Beach. One, we need a step pay plan. We need to get rid of the unfair merit system that only gives people raises based on evaluations and merit. And we know for years that has kept workers behind. A union always fights to recognize our years of service, the commitment you've put to the city, to be recognized in a step plan, and for people to be brought up in the pay progression based on those years of service. Secondly, we know doing our research as a union, every job position pretty much in public works, public utilities, human services, libraries that does essential work is below the market. And I'm going to get into that in this presentation. But we need to regrade, which means we need to move you up in the pay scale based on how far we are in the market. And third, it is absolutely despicable that there are over 800 city employees, full-time city employees with families that make less than $15 an hour, especially when we know that the Virginia Economic Policy Institute, the Commonwealth Institute report found that you need at least $65,000 a year to raise even a single child. Even $15 an hour is only $32,000, so that's even half. We need to raise the floor to $15 an hour now. You shouldn't have workers making 9, 10, 11 bucks an hour. There's no way you can support a family on that. So, and this is the year. Our plea to you is please get involved in the union. Please come to our rallies. Please step up, come to our meetings. If we're going to win anything, it's this year. And these are the three main reasons why. You all know the direct impact of the big quit. Millions of workers have quit their jobs. The city is feeling it. The critical services you provide. There are major vacancies across all departments. They're falling apart at the seams. They know they need to pay you to keep workers, to retain workers, and to hire more workers to compete. Second off, inflation, you'll know, is at a 40-year high. 8.8%. Workers cannot afford, if you get anything less than 8.8% this year, you are going backwards, right? So they have to meet that and more. Secondly, the city has put hundreds of thousands of dollars this year based on our union's fight, y'all. This is something we have won. We said last year, the main demand is they need to completely change the entire pay structure. We're not talking about a couple percentage points, but the whole structure is wrong. They invested big time and they hired this private consultant, Segal firm, to do a market study. So this stuff is on the table. They are now really looking at this, and there are real opportunities for us this year. Before we start our presentation, I just want to make sure everyone marks on your calendars that the next big step for us is the city council budget hearing. They're having a first budget hearing on the city budget, an opportunity for the public and city workers to make your voice heard and for us to share what we need. We need everyone there in big time. We need to have 10 workers speaking. We need to have a rally out front. Please do plan to join us Wednesday, April 20th after work at 5:30 for a rally at Building 1, and the council meeting starts at 6. So what are you going to expect in this presentation? I'm going to try to go through, there's a lot of information and we definitely are available to talk more, but the 4 key things we want to make sure you understand is what type of raises. When we talk about raises, what are we talking about? What do you deserve this year? Secondly, have you seen the presentation? Again, the city spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to hire this private consultant who has made a proposal to the city and made recommendations. Do you understand that? Have you seen that? We want to go through that a little bit and help explain some of that. Third, when we talk about a step pay plan, do you really understand what's at stake here and what that is and why that's important and why the union fights for that? And lastly, what are you going to do about it? We can talk all day long. Talk is cheap. If workers aren't willing to fight, to stand up and push, we are not going to win this. We need you. And this has real, stakes for us, just trying to show some of, the faces of your coworkers that are really struggling. The fact that, folks have to work 2 and 3 jobs. Folks can't even afford to live in the city. Starting base pay for utility mechanic age, just over $11 an hour. It's really atrocious. There's no way you can support a family. This brother, Jock, a good union brother, 5 kids. There's no way he can support his family on the wages he's earning, no matter how hard he works. And we're going to get into this a little more, but this is an example to kind of pique your interest. The union's research has shown that so many of your jobs are significantly below market value. When we look at other cities of a comparable cost of living and size, for instance, a street maintenance worker, $20,000 below market, right? The starting pay. When you start in Virginia Beach making $26,000, you are making $20,000 on average below all the other peer cities. We're not talking about in the Northeast and the West Coast. We're talking about here in the Southeast, here in Virginia, North Carolina, looking at Maryland, looking at Louisville, Kentucky, $20,000 below what you need. So what did the union look at when we did our research? And how did we choose what cities to look at? We picked based on the cost of living and the average population. And again, like I mentioned, here in the Southeast, cities that are largely in areas that are right to work states, right, like Virginia. So it's relatively comparable. And we found that these cities, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Alexandria, Raleigh, Miami, Louisville, Durham, and Charlotte, right, that these cities were the closest comparison to Virginia Beach. And we were going to use this to study the current wages that workers are making and compare those to you to show how far below what we think the market is. Now, when the city did when they did their market study, they looked at different areas. We don't know why they picked these areas. They never said why. I think that they just wanted to choose things that they would, I think, artificially keep the wages low. And they looked at many local Virginia public sector employers, local area here, Chesapeake, Norfolk, some of the counties, cities. They did look at some cities outside of Virginia, like Arlington, Texas, Minneapolis, Raleigh, North Carolina, Wichita, Kansas, which we looked at some of those as well. And I think some of those are reasonable. They also did pull some public sector data from private sector corporations, right? And they looked at all these to determine their market, right? So the numbers you see that have slides that look like this are from Segal, are from their consultant based on their market. The slides we look at are based on our market, which are a little different. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But so when this consultant did this study, they looked at 4 main proposals. A low-cost proposal, which I think is what the city manager is looking at right now. Of course, they want to spend as little as possible on you. Only 15% of you would get a raise, and it would be very minimal, right? The medium cost, which would bring people up, looking at your midpoint, you would be brought up based on how far off you are on your midpoint. That would impact 23% of you. Right. The high cost option, which is high cost because it impacts everybody, but it's high cost not because everybody gets a lot of money, but because everybody gets a little bit of money, and so it actually, what it means is that looking at the pay ranges, no one's going to get more than a couple percentage points because they're just going to bring you into your current range position. So everyone will get a little bit. You might get 0.5%, and that costs more than the step plan. That we think is important because a step plan is going to bring people up. It's going to impact our members, our folks the most, right? And you see here, for hourly employees, 71% of you all will get a very significant raise, right? And that's why we're fighting for the step pay plan, right? An average raise here, you see for salaried 4,300, hourly 4,300, salary 6,300. That's the kind of raises you would look at as general government employees in terms of recognizing your years of service, bringing you up. Which you see, even for the high cost option, the average raise is significantly less because everyone's going to get a little bit, whereas we think most of you all in our jobs deserve a lot, right? So again, the average raise for the step plan, if we won that, would be $6,300, which is not the most expensive plan. The city can afford this, y'all. We're talking about an overall cost in the city's payroll increase cost of 4.6%, right? They gave y'all 4.5% last year, and I went across the board. We're talking about put the money on those that deserve it the most, those that work the hardest, and that is only going to cost them about what they doled out last year. So what does it take to have a successful step pay plan? I know I'm talking fast. You can always call us and rewind, of course, but we think there needs to be 3 key elements to make a step plan successful, right? First off, they have to recognize your years of service. There are way too many workers, and we're going to talk about this a little later, way too many workers that are stuck at the bottom. Most of the workers are stuck at the bottom first 25% of your pay range. Nobody makes it to the top of the pay range. Very few, less than a quarter, are even past the midpoint. Even people with 20, 30 years are around or below the midpoint. That's outrageous. We're saying that we got to move people up in the pay scale based on your years of service, and that by 15 years, you should be at the maximum. You should not have any work 20, 30 years and still not being at the maximum of your pay scale. And again, you can earn more than the maximum. That's just to get to 100% of the pay scale. They have on there up to 125% is earnable. So that's not going to stop you from getting future wage increases. But it's saying at 15 years, you should be at 100%. You should be at the maximum of your pay scale. Secondly, we're saying that the city does not allow for enough wage growth. So even if you are in the current pay scale and you are at the top, you are only going to earn 47% higher than what you would at the very bottom of your pay scale. So the pay range width is only 47%. It's a pretty, looking at the market here and looking at the cities they looked at, this is something that even they are recommending, and the union is definitely recommending, that it needs to be at least 55%. That from the minimum compared to the maximum of your pay scale, you have to be able to increase your pay over your career at least 55%, right? And that means that, so you're earning more money as you get more years. You're not stuck artificially low, even if you're at the maximum. And then third, there needs to be a decent progression. You need to earn at least 5% between 5% between years, to move up every year, right? If it's just 1% or 2%, that's not going to get us there. And additionally, if the whole range is stuck and it doesn't move, that does not account for cost of living. That does not account for the inflation, right? A raise should be what you actually feel, what you actually can bring home and buy additional based on the experience you put in. It shouldn't be, oh, the cost of living went up 8.8% this year, so we're going to give you 8.8%. That's not a raise. That's just to keep up. So you can literally buy the same amount of stuff, right? So you have to have a step adjustment plus a cost of living to really see any increase in your standards of living as you go through your career. So we know that right now, that's what I was talking about, most of you are stuck. And this is why we need a step plan and why it must recognize years of service. That only 26% of you are making more than your midpoint, right? While you have over 41% have been there more than 10 years, but only 26% are even making the midpoint, right? That's outrageous. And there's 50% of you all that have been there more than 7.5 years. Again, and only 26% of you all that are making more than midpoint. So it's just, there's a mismatch there. Whereas if you look at police and fire, they're a lot more progressive. They're a lot higher up in the wage scale. 74% of them, again, 74% of us are paid less. That's a flip of the 26%. 74% of us are paid less than the midpoint, but only 52% of public safety are paid less than the midpoint. Why is it that they can move up in their pay scale, but public works, public utilities, human services can't? And this is the number, this is those numbers I just talked about. This is their consultant. This is where it comes from, right? If you look here, the general employees, that's you. 52% is in the first quarter, and you had 22%. That's where I got that. 74% of you all are stuck below the midpoint. Whereas if you look at administrative, if you look at public safety, the farther you go down here, public safety, you know, they're way up on the pay scale. Public safety management, 82% of them are in the highest third quarter percentile of their pay range. So this needs to be addressed. The way to address that is for general employees, our members of our union, to be brought up in the pay scale based on years of service. And here's just another example. We pulled all the waste management operator fours that have 20 years of experience, and we pulled the market as well for other cities comparable, again, in our union market. We found that as a waste operator management four, even with the 10% that they got last year, even with that, after the strike they had in August of 2020, even with that, they are still $7,713 below market, right? So it is a crying shame. We are way below. We need to really work to push on this. So what are these pay scales we're talking about? So the city has put in place this one on the left, this blue one is the current hourly non-exempt wage scale. That's all of you. And then the one on the left is the one that they are proposing, right? You know, this is not pie in the sky stuff. This is what they're proposing. Even if we win this, y'all, this will be significant. We think we need more, and we'll talk about that. But even if we win what they're proposing on the step pay plan, it will be significant, very significant for you. The midpoint would go up, but depending on where you are in the scale, between 62 cents and $1.34, and the maximum salary would go up between $1.11 and $2.59. So they moved the whole scale up. So not only did they move the whole scale up, in addition to moving the whole scale up a little bit to account for, again, that magic number, 55%, how much you're going to grow from the minimum to the maximum, they moved the whole scale up. Also, because the state law, y'all, is requiring $11 minimum wage, they're only at $10.87, right? Again, that's pathetic. We got to get that. $11 an hour is not anything that we can support, right? They're doing that because the state is requiring, not because they're nice, but because the state is mandating it this year, right? So based on those increases, the scale would go up this amount. But we're also saying the key recognized years of service, that you would be brought up within your scale significantly. You would move farther up past the midpoint toward the maximum based on your years of service. Again, if you've gotten 15 years, you would be at that maximum, right, of this new pay scale. That is what we are proposing. The reason that we need a pay scale, we mentioned earlier, is to account for the decades of unfair merit raises that have accumulated and impacted you all so greatly. It impacts everyone, every single worker, but it most disproportionately impacts Black workers and women workers in Virginia Beach. I'm not talking about, I'm saying it's very, if you're looking at these job titles that are on the screen here, 97% of waste management Black, only 2 women, 83% sewer collection Black, 0 women, 70% of water distribution is Black, general maintenance, 86% white, right? The city segregates their jobs. This is we're not blaming workers. We're talking about the city chooses to put you in your job based on your race and gender. They are self-segregating, right? And if you look at those same job titles, those are the same job titles that are disproportionately paid less and that have moved up into their job titles through their pay scales towards that midpoint, towards that maximum, less than police and fire, which are overwhelmingly white men, right? And they have significantly, and that is not a coincidence, y'all. Those race and gender dynamics matter. They impact white men, they impact white women, they impact black men, black women, they impact all of us. Because if you're in those job titles, no matter who you are, it impacts you. This is what we call systematic race and gender inequity, right? And it impacts those most directly, but it impacts all of us. And we all have to be in this fight for solidarity. And I went over that, and it talks about how the administrative and public safety jobs are overwhelmingly white, and they're much more progressed through the pay scale. Supervisors will no longer be able to give you a BS evaluation. We all know many times a supervisor will shoot down the evaluation. They don't even know what you're doing. They don't know anything about your work ethic, but they go back behind the scenes and change your evaluation to lower it. So as long as you meet the basic expectations, and you come to work and you do a decent job and you meet the basic expectations, you will get your step every year, and everyone will get the same amount. Everyone advances the same amount, and that's why it's more equal. So that was this information on the step pay plan. Now, why do we talk about we need to raise the minimum wage to 15 bucks an hour? I mean, I talked about it takes 65,000 to raise a family. Making 11 bucks an hour, that's $23,000 a year. That is not cutting it. You got in this city way too many employees. Disproportionately, those in landscaping and those in custodial are making less than 15. You see here, the yellow is all 634 Parks and Rec employees. Next is Public Works. You got 93 Public Works. The libraries, you got 49. Public Utilities, 23. So there's a lot of us that are making less than 15, and that is a crime. You know, out of these cities that we looked at, out of the 11 cities, 9 out of the 11 are already paying their city workers a minimum wage of more than $15 an hour, right? 9 out of the 11. Why is Virginia Beach one of the only 2 not doing that, right? Virginia Beach can afford to do this. And we know from the study, again, that the Commonwealth Institute for Fiscal Analysis did for us, that 9 out of 10 city employees, even those earning more than 15, right, cannot afford to even raise a single child living in the city limits. Most people live in Norfolk, live in Chesapeake, live outside of the city. Those that can't afford to live in the city, they're not in places it could be in better neighborhoods. And so we know that currently, for a single person living by themselves, it takes $43,451 to live in the city, right? That's almost 22 bucks an hour, right? We're not making that, right? If you're gonna have even a single child, it's gonna cost you $65,000. If you have 2 children, you gotta have $82,000, forget it, right? But we're nowhere near that on our pay scale. So that is why we need to raise a minimum wage to 15 bucks an hour now. And our members voted on that unanimously at our union meeting, our last union meeting. Now, the third proposal on here is for the regrade. And this is where we get into the market study analysis that our union research department did. So I'm gonna go through a number of pay grades. This applies to most all of you. If your job title is not on here, I can put together a chart for you, let me know, but this applies to you, I guarantee you. So starting with utility mechanic aid, the lowest incoming position in public utilities, we're $5,000 below market, right? With the starting salary of 37, I'm sorry, this is mid-range. So, okay, so just step back a little bit. Part of the recommendations that the city is making, right? And again, one of them is the step pay plan that is on the table. They also are looking at this as a regrade, considering a regrade. They said, in order to consider a regrade, their requirements, not ours, but their requirements would be looking at the mid-range. So looking at not what people actually make, but looking at the pay range and looking at where the mid-range is of the pay range. Again, most people aren't even getting to the mid-range. So we're even far behind that. Again, that's why we need years of service. But in terms of a regrade, look at the mid-range of your market. So all these numbers are based on the mid-range. So this is what a utility mechanic aid would make at 37,000. Again, I don't think there are any utility mechanic aids even making that. But even at that, you're still 5,000 below, which is 13.5% below market. So even according to the city's own requirements, every 5% you should be regraded up 1%. And that's what Segal is recommending. Again, the city has not adopted this yet. It's on the table. They're looking at it. So a utility mechanic aid, 13.5%, you would need to go, they're currently at G13. Again, I'm gonna go back to these wages. G13, right? The minimum is 14. They would need to move to a G16, right? Again, from a minimum would be $14.74, the minimum would be $17. The minimum would be that, right? That's what we're saying to get back to where we need for a utility mechanic aid, right? Utility mechanic 2, they're at 16, they're at $2,349 below market compared to these cities. They would need to move up that 2,300. If you take that over 43,000, that's a little over 5%. They would need to move up from a G16 to a G17. Street maintenance, right? We talked about how the starting salary is 20,000, but even the midpoint is 9,991 below market. Midpoint, even 32,000. I mean, it's just outrageous. People are getting paid that. This is a G10 pay scale. So that is 30% below market. You would need to move up 6 pay grades to a G16, right? That's what we're proposing for the regrade. Custodians, again, some of the lowest paid workers in the city, custodians and landscape workers. Custodians, the midpoint, $27,000. That's the midpoint. I mean, it's just a shame. That is $10,484 below market. That's 37%. So they would need to move up at least 7 grades from G7 to G14, right? Laborers, $10,000 behind the market. Midpoint currently 30,000. They would need to move up also 32%. That would be 6 grades from a G9 to a G15. Heavy equipment operators. Again, there's HEO 1, 2, 3s. The midpoint for an HEO 1, which is a G20, is about $1,827, which is 3.5% below market. We recommend moving them up 1 grade from a G20 to a G21. All heavy equipment operators, 1, 2s, and 3s should move up 1 grade. Next, we're looking at carpenters. This is carpenter 2. It also is pretty similar for carpenter 1s. You are 5,533 below market. That's 11%, taking over 50,000, your current midpoint. So you need to move up from a G19 to a G21. Excuse me. Fleet maintenance, looking at the guys in the garage that take care of the city's maintenance on all the equipment. They need to move up 3 grades, 7,000. The midpoint for fleet maintenance, doing that kind of heavy equipment operation maintenance work, $45,000 for that kind of work. Incredible. They are 16% below market, need to move from a 17 to a 20. I just pulled here, before we end, I pulled 2 examples of 2 of our leaders, and they're okay with us sharing their information to show what we're talking about here, right? Terry Green, who's a utility crew leader, which is currently a G20, currently makes $59,000. He's not doing terrible for himself, but that's still not enough. So we're saying, even for you guys, 32 years of experience, that think that I'm making $59,000, I'm not doing bad, you are still getting ripped off. We're talking about, if they do this new pay scale and they recognize Terry's years of service, at 15 years he'd be at maximum. And if they do a regrade, just 1 grade up for again, remember, for utility mechanics who go up 1 grade, he would get a raise of $10,561, right? Devon, who's in stormwater, been here 13 years. He's making $43,919. He's at a G19, motor equipment operator 3. The current min is 19,000. The current max is 28. He would need to move. So the new scale would move. He would, for a G19, The new minimum, again, according to what they're proposing, would move the max from $28.73 to $30.62. He wouldn't quite be at the max yet because he's only been here 13 years. So he would move up to 29 bucks an hour, which is about $60,000, right? If you move him, Brother Devon is not at the midpoint of his scale. He's been here 13 years. That's outrageous, right? So that would be a $16,000 raise. And then if you do the regrade, again, remember, equipment operators would all go up one grade. He would move up from a G20 to a G21. I'm sorry, from a G19 to a G20. That 5% would put him back up here at $19,788. That is what we're fighting for, y'all. 13 years, a motor equipment operator 3 would get this example, $19,780 raise, y'all. This is what we're fighting for. We need you involved. We need you to plug in. We need you to help build this union. We need you to come out on April the 20th when we're down at City Council. This is the year, y'all. Please dig in. Please be active. Please talk to your coworkers. When we call for actions every Wednesday, we're having shirt days. If you don't have a union t-shirt, please call us to get one. We're wearing them every Wednesday. We're having our union shirt visibility on the job. Take selfies. Come to our meetings, y'all. We meet every other week. We meet on Zoom. Sometimes we meet in the park. We need your input. We need you at our rallies. We got to turn up. Waste management, y'all, has been turning up. We need everyone to turn up to show that we are what we're fighting for, and to show that we're standing together and that we mean business. We need change now. So great talking to y'all. Please give us a holler if you have any questions, and look forward to talking to you soon. Take care and peace.